SD Bullion has an interesting article, Silver Doctors. U.S. gold scrap market is now drying up. Scrap gold, we buy gold, anything, necklaces, jewelry, we'll buy it all. Remember that? U.S. gold scrap market is drying up. Americans pawned off their best asset to go further into debt. Once again, SRSRoccoReport.com is on fire lately. That's who actually wrote this article. After the U.S. economy disintegrated in 2008 due to the banking and housing crisis, Americans pawned off a record amount of gold. How much gold? Nearly 32 million ounces or 1,000 metric tons. Reminds me of Fat Bastard. He weighs a metric ton. That's one heck of a lot of gold. Matter of fact, U.S. gold scrap supply at its peak of 160 metric tons in 2011 was more than any other country in the world, even India and China. Talk about a lot of people selling off their, again, scrap gold. And scrap gold is considered pretty much anything. Broken necklace, an old ring, good or bad shape. It's just, it's not a bullion coin. It's not a bar. It's considered scrap gold. And I've said this before, so before I finish reading this article, let me start you off with a pro tip from Jason Ip4 to you. Here it is, pro tip. I've said this before. It's been a while, and I'm sure probably I'll remind some people and other people who never heard this before, be like, not be a bad idea, Jason Ip, man, you're all right, son. And that's this. When somebody bought, for example, that scrap gold, and the price of gold when they bought it several years back, maybe back before it was even $1,000 an ounce, or even where it's at today. Let's just round up $1,230. It says right now, $1,230. They would, last year, this year, they went out and bought some jewelry, yada yada yada. They don't really want to get rid of it. Time's a little tough, but all of a sudden, gold is now, again, looking into the future a little bit, $2,500 an ounce, $3,000 an ounce, hell, even $2,000 an ounce. Just somewhere quite a bit higher than today, right? And you know what's going to happen. They're going to know what they paid for the jewelry. But they also understand when I go to sell this, because I need money, the pawn shop's going to measure it and all that, weigh it, and they're going to tell me this is what it's worth. We buy gold, here's what it's worth. And they're going to be happy to hear the number that the pawn shop or the little gold shop tells them, I'll give you this much for it, because the price of gold has gone up. In their mind, they may not even know that. They just know what I paid for it and what it's worth today. Hey, I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, I'll sell it to you. Knowing, or not even knowing, that the person offering them the money, the pawn shop or whatever, the gold place, is still offering them not spot price, well under spot price for this, gold scrap. But they're happy getting whatever for it. Then they take it and then they melt it down or just ship it off without even melting it down themselves, obviously, and they get their little fee. So the pro tip is you could do something like that. You get one of those little tools, sdbullion.com. They actually have one of those little testers that measures the purity and everything of the gold to make sure it's, basically not fake and stuff. You could get something like that, I believe, and, make sure it's real. And then you, of course, undercut. Well, the price of gold today is $3,000 an ounce, and you've got about a quarter of an ounce worth of gold here in this, pile of scrap. And I'm not buying this because I like jewelry. When you leave here today, should we do a deal? This will be melted down. I'm going to ship it out. I have a company. They melt it down, and that's it. So this is scrap gold as far as I'm concerned. So the price is this. I got to make some money, so here's what I'm offering you. And maybe it's 25% under what spot price is. Maybe it's 50%. You're going to offer them 50%. But even at 50%, if gold's $3,000, you're offering them gold at $1,500, so to speak. They're going to, oh, wow, there's that much there? Oh, okay. Yeah, where do I sign? I'll do it. And now you send that off, melt down. You're not going to get the full $3,000 an ounce price either, but you'll get close to it. And then you sell it off to them. They the refiners, smelters, whatever. Have a nice day. You could do a little side business, but naturally it's going to take some cash, liquid cash in your hands, so that you could then get the scale out, weigh it, test it, and all that stuff first. Okay, here's what it weighs. Here's what I can give you today. Either do the deal or we don't. Plain and simple. Yes, you could. I mean, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable doing it out of my house, but you could certainly meet at a McDonald's or meet somewhere, someplace. Bring your little scale, bring your little meter, and say, okay, I'll do the deal right here, in the public. Again, because you're just a average person. You don't have access to a business. You're not going to create a new gold store. I'm talking to me or you. Just, hey, how can we do this? Well, let's put some ads on Craigslist. Let's do this. Let's do that, and then meet people at a large area in the public to do the deal. It's plain and simple. So that's a little tip for you. There's always ways to make a couple bucks. If you just look around, use your head a little bit, think about things. What can I do? How can I benefit? Because you got to understand the average person, when all this happens and silver and gold is very high, they're not going to know anything about any of this. The stuff we talk about, the stuff I come out here and do videos, they're not going to know anything except I need to get rid of this gold right now. I need to get some money for this because I'm in a tight spot all of a sudden. Ben Bernanke didn't bail me out. I'm in a tight spot. Need to get rid of this. And they're going to be happy with the price you give them. And you're going to be real happy giving them that price because you just made a huge profit giving it to the bigger guy, the bigger fish. So, anyways, nearly 32 million ounces, 1,000 metric tons. That's how much gold, as far as scrap metal, has been dumped, or sold off, I should say. It is quite unfortunate that Americans have pawned off their best asset only to go further into debt, today enabling them to buy more garbage and trinkets they really don't need. This is quite the opposite of Americans who become being extremely frugal and financially responsible after the 1930s Great Depression. Today, banks have made it easy for Americans to buy now and pay later. The consequences of this buy now, pay later economic model is explained in this recent Zero Hedge article. 45% of Americans spend up to half their income paying off credit card debts. Or repaying credit card debts. First, roughly 50% of Americans have debt balances, excluding mortgages, mind you, which I talked about the other day, of over $25,000, with the average person owing over $37,000 versus a median personal income of just over $30,000. Therefore, it's not difficult to believe, as Northwestern Mutual points out, that 45% of Americans spend up to half of their monthly take-home pay on debt service alone, which, again, excludes mortgage debt. Because 45% of Americans are paying up to half of their monthly income to pay down credit cards and debt, they can't use this income to purchase new goods and services. Thus, a staggering amount of the U.S. gross domestic product, GDP, has been brought forward thanks to easy credit and credit cards. And this is what Americans spend the most money on in the first quarter of 2017. Recreational goods and vehicles. Matter of fact, I'll pull this up. It's a small chart. You got to look at this. Recreational goods and vehicles. Four-wheelers, toys like that, Next, which is surprising to me. Actually, I thought this would be first. Healthcare. Healthcare costs. Nope. We'd rather have our recreational vehicles and stuff. Again, especially when we can't afford it, but we get approved anyways. That's great. That's even better. Other non-durable goods, food and beverage purchases outside, other services, recreational service or recreation services, financial services and insurance, food services and accommodations, furnishings and durable household equipment, transportation services, and then these are the ones in the red. Other durable goods, clothing and footwear. So people ain't really spending on clothing and footwear. Gasoline and other energy goods, that's down. Housing and utilities, that's down. And motor vehicles and parts, way down. Again, the auto apocalypse is upon us. Massive sale. Again, 2015 Nissan Leaf, 15,000 miles on it. Picked it up for $10K. Get out of here. I feel like I scored so good on that car, I can't even stop talking about it. Let me just say that. And I got the new charger in the mail today that I'm looking online. There's $500 chargers on Amazon and everywhere else. Pick this thing up for $350. You can program it by shaking it. When you first turn it on, to the different amperages. It starts off at 6 amps, 8 amps, 10 amps, 12 amps, 16 amps, 24 amps, 32 amps. I'm like, wow. Shake it up. Oh, that's the spot I want. That's what I want. Plug that baby in. Now I have 240 volts charging my car up. It charged it pretty damn quick, I must say, when I got home today. And I even thought to myself, again, my mind, I can't stop my monkey mind from saying, what if I can make a couple dollars doing this or doing that? And my mind immediately went to, I got this off of somebody on eBay. I saw the picture they used. I know where this came from. It's Alibaba, .com, Chinese good, which, let's face it, everything comes from there anyways, right? Oh, but that one has a stamp of GE or so-and-so. Doesn't matter. It comes from the same place, right? So I reached out to him. Hey, excuse me, you have the 16 amp model only, 240 volt, and 110 volt or 120 volt. It'll do both. Whereas the little junky charger that comes with the car is only a 12 amp, 120 volt. This one does 16 amp, 120, or 16 amp, 240, which is double. Anyways, excuse me, Mr. Chinaman, how much and what quantity would I need to secure, can you give me some price points on this? The quantity I would need to do, what kind of pricing you can give me on both of these, because I'm interested in both of these. He replied back, sir, could you tell me how long of a cable length you need? 20 foot would be good. And what kind of end connector would you like on it? And I forget the actual code, I replied, but it's basically like a washer and dryer, that kind. Or not washer, dryer. That would be sufficient. Okay, I'll get back to you. Good. And I'm thinking to myself, $500 something all day long online for that kind of a charger. And those usually don't even have settings where you can actually tell it lower the amperage or raise the amperage, which of course your car has to be able to accept it in the first place, because the charging actually happens inside the car. It has its own charger. You're just feeding it what your house is capable of feeding it, which is why if you don't have the right wiring and my car is going to pull a lot down right now, I'll better turn the amps on this baby down just to be safe. You can do that just by shaking it when it first turns on. So I'm waiting to hear the reply. And what I'm hoping for, because the cheaper model that I told you just does 16 amps only, online I'm finding them for about $200, $220, somewhere around there. The more expensive one again was like $350. Certainly better than $500. So I'm thinking if I can get a deal on these things, and I got to buy 10 of this and 10 of that, or 20 of that one and 20 of the other one, doing math in my head, it might be worth starting my little JSNIP4 Amazon account, Amazon Prime. Your pal JSNIP4, you need an electric vehicle charger? I got you covered. I can't help my monkey mind. It's always moving, gears. Make extra money. How can you do some extra money? Extra stuff. YouTube ad revenue still sucks. But at least I still get a little paycheck at the end of the month for the little video ads that play. That's nice. But if I'm to be honest, it was a lot nicer a couple months ago. But again, that's free money, so to speak. I could save a little bit of that, save up enough to give Mr. Chinaman the order. He's going to ship me, 20, 30, 40 of them, how many I have to order. Assuming I can get the powerful one for maybe $200 a piece. The cheaper one, 80, 90, $100, I don't know. And again, with Amazon Prime, I just ship them all to Amazon. It's in their warehouse. I never touch it again. Anybody that places an order, it ships right out of the warehouse. All I do is pay the one-time shipping to Amazon. Not to mention, they have a facility in Riverview, Florida. I wonder if I can call Amazon. Hey, I'm a new customer of yours that's going to be selling, vendor. Can I drive my 2015 Nissan Leaf? Cost me 15-20 cents to drive over there to you and unload a bunch of these EV cords for my account rather than pay for shipping. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Come over to Riverview. Come to our Riverview office. You don't have to pay for UPS or anything. Great, fantastic, man. That would be great if it goes down like that. And if that happens, just as an FYI, I'll let you know. So anyways, after that chart. But that doesn't mean that Americans stopped spending completely. Quite the contrary. According to the BEA's goal-seeked models, even as retail sales tumbled as Obamacare continued to drain disposable income away from other discretionary purchases, Americans who spent far less on cars, clothing, and housing in the first quarter than in quarter four were scrambling to buy recreational vehicles? That's right. When I travel, and that, again, that also includes RVs, as in motorhomes, four-wheelers, side-by-sides. That's recreational, okay? But I don't know if this was specific to RVs or all of that. It just says recreational goods and vehicles. So I think all that's lumped in. When I travel up and down the interstate where I live, I see a lot of those recreational vehicles, RVs, especially on the weekends. What is even more hilarious is to see a huge 4x4 truck pulling a large RV, which is also pulling a smaller trailer behind it with two ATVs on it. All of these vehicles consume one hell of a lot of fuel. This sudden motivation for Americans to get into an RV and leave the rat race for a weekend makes perfect sense to me. This is an extremely important indicator showing how Americans would rather go further into debt up to their eyeballs just to get away from it all. Get me the F out of here. I'm tired. I need a break. Americans spending a record percentage of their funds on RVs to escape the insanity suggests that the economy is getting ready to roll over and fall off a cliff. Of course, Americans always want to do everything big, right? You go big or go home. So if you have the money or credit and a very large truck, and if not, get a credit and get one of those too, you can pull one of these babies down the highway. Or you get the kind you can drive, and then you can pull your toys behind it. Right? Same difference. Most of the RVs I see have 2 axles. However, this one has 4 axles and more square feet than some small homes in older surrounding big cities. Unfortunately, RVs will be one of the first items that will go extinct in the United States when the domestic oil industry disintegrates. Regardless, let's get back to the drying up of the U.S. secondary gold supply market. U.S. gold scrap supply declines to the lowest level in recent history. According to the data put out by the GFMS 2017 World Gold Survey, U.S. gold scrap supply fell to a low of 58.7 metric tons, or 1.9 million ounces, in 2016 versus a record 160 metric tons, 5.1 million ounces, in 2011. What is interesting to see in this chart is that U.S. gold scrap supply in 2016, 58.7 metric tons, is nearly 2.5 times less than it was in 2010, while the gold price was even higher. Thus, Americans pawned off a great deal more gold in 2010 when the price was lower at $12.25 compared to $12.67 in 2016, which means the U.S. gold scrap supply market is drying up. This can be more clearly seen in the following chart, which, in case you want to look at that, let me pull it up for you. I'm that kind of guy. Let's go back up a little bit. U.S. gold supply, 2010 to 2016. And then down here, the next one. U.S. gold scrap supply, 2003 to 2016. So as you can see, people were unloading in 2011 when gold was $1,900. Hit the all-time high and then down, 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 down. So as I said, what's going to happen when the price is $2,500, $3,000? First of all, my question would be, are these numbers going to jump back up again like in 2011? Or are people tapped out, they already got rid of all their scrap gold, so now there's nothing there. Sorry about your luck. I guess that remains to be seen. But he says not only has the U.S. gold scrap supply fallen 2.5 times from its peak in 2011, it is also less than it was in 2003, when the gold price was also 3.5 times less. Americans pawned 67.6 metric tons of gold in 2003, when the price was $363 an ounce. However, with the gold price at a much higher level of $12.67 last year, U.S. gold scrap supply fell to a low of 58.7 metric tons. Again, the data implies that the U.S. secondary gold scrap market is likely drying up. As was stated in the beginning of this article, total U.S. gold scrap supply equaled nearly 1,000 metric tons from 2008 to 2016. What is more interesting is if we compare U.S. jewelry demand versus gold scrap versus China and India. When the gold price reached a peak of $1,900 in 2011, U.S. jewelry demand was 60.3 metric tons. Again, this is the year U.S. gold scrap supply reached a record 160 metric tons. We must remember most of gold scrap comes from recycled gold jewelry, which means Americans pawned 266% more gold than their gold jewelry demand in 2011. Here are the 2011 gold figures for the U.S., China, and India. All 2011. U.S. gold scrap, 160 metric tons. Was that divided by 60.3 metric tons of gold? So gold scrap versus, interesting. So I guess they don't include gold jewelry and scrap together. So that is interesting. So 160 tons of gold scrap and 60.3 tons of jewelry demand 266%. Chinese gold scrap, 144 tons versus 547 tons of gold jewelry demand 26%. Indian scrap gold, 58 metric tons to 667 metric tons of gold jewelry demand, 9%. As we can see, Americans pawned off 266% more gold than their annual gold jewelry demand in 2011. So in other words, China and India, the jewelry is out of control. People love the gold jewelry. Very little scrap metal being sold. On our side, though, we're selling the hell out of ours versus hardly buying anything. A bunch of gold scrap, but hardly any jewelry. While some Chinese and Indians were selling their gold jewelry as scrap in 2011, the majority were holding on to it, especially in India. Of course, this is no secret, as India's tradition is to build their wealth by acquiring gold jewelry. Americans are in serious trouble as they have sold off the family's gold jewels to go further into debt, while the Asians and Indians continue to acquire the yellow precious metal. When the markets finally crack, very few Americans will be holding gold, which is why I tell you, you are not going to have to worry about gold confiscation, silver confiscation. It is not going to happen. You have nothing to worry about. Ain't enough of us that hold it. Unfortunately, the majority of Americans will see their highly inflated investments of stocks, bonds, and real estate collapse, while the value price of gold skyrockets. Again, not yet, but it's coming, and you know this. Take care.